The dawn of commercial aviation 1900 to 1908. At the dawn of the 20th century, the sky was no longer a boundary, it was a promise. Between 1900 and 1908, aviation pioneers raced not just to fly, but to prove flight could be useful. Governments, investors, and the U.S. military watched closely. The dream wasn't just airborne freedom, it was commercial air travel. Every successful flight pushed humanity closer to scheduled routes, paid passengers, and a future above the clouds. But progress was fragile and dangerously experimental. September 17, 1908. Fort Myer, Virginia. The U.S. Army was evaluating an aircraft that could redefine warfare and transportation. The plane was the Wright Flyer Model 888. The controls, Orville Wright, beside him, Lieutenant Thomas E. Selfridge, a military observer. This wasn't a stunt. It was a demonstration flight, one meant to secure America's first military aviation contract. What happened next would become the first fatal accident involving a powered aircraft. Early aircraft propellers weren't metal. They were carved from laminated wood, lightweight, handcrafted, and vulnerable. During flight, one of the Wright Flyer's propellers split under stress. Fragments struck control wires, severing them instantly. With no redundancy systems and no structural protection, the aircraft lost control in seconds. This was not pilot error. It was a mechanical failure. One that exposed the deadly limits of early aviation engineering. Witnesses watched in horror as the aircraft pitched violently downward. There was no recovery altitude. The Wright Flyer struck the ground nose first. Orville Wright survived, but severely injured. Lieutenant Selfridge did not. For the first time, the promise of flight was overshadowed by its cost. Aviation had claimed its first passenger fatality. Thomas Selfridge was not reckless, he was an engineer, a soldier, and a believer in flight's future. His death shook the aviation world, and the U.S. military. Orville Wright, once celebrated as a pioneer, now carried the weight of survival. This tragedy transformed aviation from a spectacle into a responsibility. There was no black box and no formal accident board. Yet investigators identified a critical truth: material failure under aerodynamic stress. The findings pushed designers to rethink propeller construction, control systems, and pilot protection. Helmets, once ignored, became mandatory. Engineering discipline replaced trial and error bravado. The crash did not end aviation, it reshaped it. Aircraft designs evolved. Materials improved. Testing standards emerged. By the 1920s, flight was no longer a daredevil act, it was becoming a system. In the U.S., the impact was profound. Military aviation accelerated, but cautiously federal oversight slowly emerged, laying groundwork for what would become the FAA decades later. Public trust had to be rebuilt, flight by flight. Every modern safety protocol traces back to moments like 1908. Redundant systems, engine testing, material fatigue analysis. Aviation became safe not by avoiding failure but by studying it relentlessly. The first commercial aviation tragedy was not the end of a dream. It was the beginning of accountability. Because of 1908, millions now fly safely every day. The sky remembers its pioneers, even when history forgets.